Everyone has Uno, dib. Came free of your archetype.
I didn't get it. I have the oldest archetype known to man.
No, you don't. I bought mine on day one, you
Well, mine didn't have it.
You have Uno, you
I don't have it.
You have Uno!
I don't fucking have Uno, mother.
Go to it in the lab and you'll be able to download it for
I don't have two. I don't have three.
It's a card game.
I don't have seven.
It's a diamond!
Remember that time when your dad walked in on you watching High School DxD, and you had to try to explain to him that there's more to it than just walking up to a girl and milking him like a cow? It's gotten to the point where that's kind of what it feels like every time I have to talk about Godzilla. Except I'm the dad that has to walk into their son's room, wondering where I went wrong as I plunge ever deeper into the never-ending abyss of sorrow and misery. Godzilla's Singular Point is kind of a difficult one to talk about. Riding hot on the heels of the provocative art trilogy, it had a lot to prove. Even so, it seems like everybody's getting their second-hand panties in a twist as to whether this is the second coming of Christ or the origin of Bacchus being sussy. So here I am, yet again, on this blessed Markiplier Monday, to give my extremely mediocre opinion on Godzilla's Singular Point, and if you should watch it. Only issue being that the answer is not quite as simple as yes or no. There's a lot I like about it and think makes for an interesting and fun show. But there's also a lot here that makes me want to put SpaghettiOs directly into my man-cooch. So we're just gonna cut through the pop on the party rock anthem, and find out if Godzilla's Singular Point is the right show for you. Are you excited? I'm excited. So let's just go ahead and get this right out of the way, yeah? This show is confusing as
What is that? What the is that?
Hardly a nuanced critique, I know, but it's worth pointing out because it's going to be the complaint you hear the most. And it's not like anybody is wrong about that. The screenplay was written by the notorious
to enjoy it.
an ex-physicist and sci-fi writer known for his scientific lucidity and literary impenetrability. And both you and I know you have a hard time penetrating anything as is. He was originally just meant to be a sci-fi consultant for the project, but eventually found himself with a full-on writing role. So now, with full reins,
Enjoy it.
decided he was going to write this script like one of his short stories and successfully gave me a hemorrhoid, filled to the brim with advanced physics, hypothetical biology, and pretty much everything else you can find in the science category on Skillshare. It's honestly an active chore to try and piece everything together. I personally would have been satisfied with the biblical passages, the subtle commentary, and the Evangelion references, like Spear of Angerus. I almost didn't catch that one. But instead, the hyper-focus on science takes up a majority of the screen time. All the while, this cretin dog monster lightly teases me with its dumpster truck ass. There's one scene in mind where May is describing the Singular Point for the first 10 minutes of the episode, and I audibly went, "Shut the f*** up. Could you please slow down? I'm trying to, wait, I'm trying to, could you please slow down?" To nobody's surprise, this is a big turnoff for not just me, but a lot of people. The Godzilla franchise has always been one where there's an obvious answer and explanations come second after the atomic ass ripping. What I mean to say is that it's not very subtle. But now that we've got a series that's shaking things up in a dramatic way, it's kind of freaking people out. Me, on the other hand, I think this kind of shakeup was a good idea. Just maybe not an idea that was executed so well. I'm all up for sci-fi, but it's always been the fiction element that reeled me in more than the science. And I think that's very fair to say about a lot of people. It's very fascinating seeing how the human equation fits into the vast unknown. It's what makes properties like Star Trek work when they aren't being horrifically racist. I don't think a lot of people went into Blade Runner hoping to understand how replicants were made. Instead, they were probably there to be told a good story. That being said, there's a pretty good balance of character moments, action, and story to hold your interest. Not to mention a pretty kick-ass OP that kinda reminds me a bit of High School of the Dead's OP, but that's neither here nor there. The EP is pretty sweet too. It's been stuck in my head for 2 weeks now and I Don't think it's going away anytime soon. Without going into too much detail, the story is probably the strongest thing going on here. Basic synopsis being that the world is rapidly being thrown into chaos due to unknown forces later named Singular Points. This brings about the rise of the monsters and a catastrophic event they legally cannot call the Third Impact. The actual build-up was pretty well done, slowly building a darker, more sinister tone as the show progressed. It never fully crosses that line, they really couldn't go that far for the kiddies, but there is a ton of apocalyptic imagery sprinkled throughout. The showmakers even went as far as making Godzilla an omen, foretold in those funny little drawings you see at restaurants all the time. Look, there he is, right there on that same scroll as that lady getting defiled by an octopus. It's a slow build, but a worthwhile one. There's lots of mystery involved, and constantly being out of the loop, whether intentional or not, really helped carry me through this viewing more than anything else. I also like the little commentaries sprinkled throughout the series that actually took advantage of what they had available to them. Considering this being an ode to the Showa era, it was pretty neat to see things like Rodan horrifically terrorizing a city, and moments later we've got him being kawaii desu ne. I've done that take about 10 times now and I still hate myself. Very much like how the original Gojira was meant to be an awful monster that embodied the horrors of war. But now you could fit him in your ass if you really wanted to. The characters themselves have their quirks and charms, but are severely lacking in the depth department. There's not much to the two main leads aside from being dorks, which can kinda just make you roll your eyes when you have to hear. But does that stop Twitter from thirsting all over the female characters? Why, of course not, don't be so silly. The side characters tend to lean pretty heavily onto their one defining character trait and not have much else to them. I do like Mr. O a good bit though. His constant taunting of a gigantic, ruinous monster while getting his ass handed to him in a big clown robot was actually pretty great. Then there's Pelops 2, which is just so cute that he makes you want to gouge his stupid eyes out. The AI characters in the show also do not help whatsoever and really amplify the confusion up to 11. It just reaches a point towards the end where I stop pretending to understand and just let things happen, which was simultaneously frustrating because I wanted to feel like a smart boy, but also liberating because trying to keep up with the stuff that even the writer didn't understand made my minge cringe. But put the overemphasis on the science stuff aside, and you've honestly got the workings of a pretty interesting and alluring anime here. As you all know by now, I'm a big sucker for this sort of design that focuses on simple designs but big colors. Just something about it that's really pleasing to the eye. It's very vibrant and bouncy, creating a super fun image that grabs the Crayola-eating ape child out of you and says, "You like this, don't you, bitch?" Funny enough, the whole reason they introduced that style was so that it would blend better with the CG animation they threw in there for the monsters. Normally, I'd tell you that 3D CG in anime is the work of Satan and creates a strong visual disconnect that takes you out of the moment. There's hardly any advantage to it aside from saving time and money, unless you're expelled from paradise, in which there's 2 advantages. But Singular Point might be kind of an exception here. Only the monsters are in CG, and considering that they are literally otherworldly, presenting them in a different style actually kind of works. Sure, there are a good few hiccups in the actual animation blending, but there's been far worse, and I can't find myself to say that I didn't like it. I especially like Anguirus because he feels so dominant and powerful. The fight between him and Jet Jaguar is legitimately really fun, and the very few times that they do show some of the monsters in 2D, they just don't have that same ooh, you know? Honestly, I think I'll take anything so long as it's not Godzilla Earth again. God bless you, Urubuchi-san, but sometimes I think you would be better off as a toaster salesman. Keeping on with the positives, I really gotta say, I love how this series reinvented a lot of the older Showa-era monsters and made them their own. Sure, it's preying on my nostalgia, but at least it takes them and does something new with them. I especially love how kaiju like Rodan and Kumanga are sized down but still present a threat in numbers. It really helps make Godzilla feel like the harbinger of the apocalypse he's meant to be. I'm also really glad that they gave Jet Jaguar a big spotlight. The original idea was just another robot to have that role, but the idea to make it Jet Jaguar was just genius. It's really great seeing little character moments with him, like playing with children, considering the entire idea of Jet Jaguar was pieced together by a child. It makes me feel like the people behind this actually cared about this project and went out of their way to pay homage to these monsters. Some other aspects of these monsters are maybe not as good. Some designs feel pretty uninspired and generic, or just flat out bad in some cases. Me and many other people would argue that the new Godzilla is maybe just a tad bit too inspired by Shin Godzilla, and not to mention the overly convoluted science that applies to all of the monsters. I'll be honest, I came into this review with a positive attitude, but as I was writing all of my points down, I just had this moment where I went, wait, was that really all that good? And the answer I eventually came down to was, nah, it was just kind of okay. Kind of like how I mentioned before when I just stopped pretending to understand what was going on. It felt like there also reached a point in the show where it really wanted me to stop asking questions and just accept what was going on. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but the writer not even knowing what's going on I feel just kind of confirms that. And hey, I respect his honesty there. And I've said it countless times before, but anytime it's going to be a requirement for me to turn my brain off to enjoy, you're probably going to lose me. In my case, I'm here for more narrative than anything else. I could care less about something like Godzilla only having about 10 minutes of screen time so long as the other 300 minutes are enjoyable. As much as I do love the nostalgic elements, I didn't start watching to be pandered to. I started watching for a good time and to watch something new. And the show was really only able to deliver that about half of the time. The other half being unnecessarily intricate physics lessons and lesser homages to better properties, almost outright copying at some points. Seriously, Hideki Anno could sue, I swear to God. Then there's just me issues, like how I feel the series shot itself in the foot by trying to explain everything away. Part of what made this apocalyptic event so intriguing to me was the mystery behind it. The fact that it was so elusive and unknown is what made it feel so threatening in the first place. So when explaining things, it just kind of killed the atmosphere of it all. Just imagine watching Friday the 13th and in the plot, the main characters chemically discover why he's just impervious to everything and doesn't die. Once you find out his elixir to life is a coffee enema, he's not really all that imposing anymore, is he? So now comes the question, do I think you should watch this series? Like I mentioned before, it's honestly a difficult question to answer. But with a tear in my eye and a finger in my ass, I must say that while I did enjoy it, it really doesn't hold all too well in my head. I'm hopeful that the series will go on and build on the foundation that it's already made. I'm not entirely sure where they could go next considering just how hard they blew their load at the end of this season, but they did leave a neat little after-credit sting that piqued my interest. So here's what I'll say. Trust your gut on this one. If you've been seeing all this footage and think, hey, that looks pretty good, then sure, I'd say it's worth a shot. But if you're not so sure, or you've already set certain expectations, then this series probably isn't for you. The one good thing of note I can say here is that despite all the nostalgia bait, I'd actually say that this series is pretty inviting to everybody, even if you're not all that invested in the Godzilla franchise. So just go into this one with no expectations and see where you find yourself. It's a pretty split opinion on this one, so just know you won't be lonely on whatever side you fall. So long as that side doesn't take you to bug coitus, you should be all good. Either way, I think that's about all I can really say about this one. It's weird, but respectable. It's long-winded, but it's fun. I don't know, that's all I've got. Do you all even care anymore? I mean, truly? Would you all remember me if I just dropped off the face of a planet, never to be seen or heard from again? Sometimes I wonder if any—
Get a life.